End of course test. Exercises 1 and 2.
Hello everyone. For my assignment on issues in the workplace in the UK, I did a review of the literature concerning absence from work. The key areas that I focused on were some of the reasons why people are absent from work, the differences in working in the public and private sectors which affect absence rates, and finally, how companies manage absence. I'm now going to present a summary of what I found. There are many studies that look at the reasons for absence from work, and they identify a number of factors. Firstly, the gender of the employee may influence his or her ability to attend work. For instance, a female employee is more likely to have childcare responsibilities, and therefore could be absent as a result of that. Another significant factor can be the attitude of the employee towards their work. For instance, their level of commitment. There's been a lot of debate about the extent to which this actually does influence absence, and from what I could tell, the research hasn't reached any firm conclusions. In some organisations, it seems that there's a culture in which absence is accepted, but some reports criticise this model as being too much of a generalisation. Other influences relate to the type of work the employee does. For example, it's been claimed that those who work in industry are more likely to have high absence rates than those who work in office-based roles. It's also important to recognise that different groups within a single organisation might have different patterns of behaviour related to absence. For example, one of the other underlying themes in the literature that I've been reading is that there seems to be a direct connection between how often an employee is absent and what size of work group he or she belongs to. Interestingly, it's been found that the bigger the group, the higher the levels of absence. Some reports focus specifically on a comparison between public sector organisations and private sector ones. There appears to be some evidence that absence levels are higher in the public sector, although it's not exactly clear why this should be the case. One explanation that has been put forward is that in some cases, public sector organisations may not be as efficient in their handling of staff absence. This might be because their systems are more bureaucratic. In other words, they involve a lot of administrative procedures. This can be due to factors which are external rather than internal, such as the degree of control the government imposes on the public sector. However, there do seem to be a number of other plausible explanations for the differences between these two sectors. Firstly, a public sector organisation tends to have a large workforce, which consists of a higher number of female and older employees, both of which groups are likely to record higher absence rates. It is also suggested that public sector organisations are more likely to give their absent employees benefits for a longer period and are less likely to place restrictions on these. Finally, I'd like to talk briefly about my final point of interest, which is the management of absence. In organisations which are more authoritarian, that is, with managers having high levels of control over their employees, absence levels tend to be low. Perhaps this is hardly surprising, as employees may be concerned about the prospect of being disciplined in some way if they take what's considered to be too many days off. On the other hand, if you consider an organisation where the manager's attitudes to their employees is one of trust, those managers are more likely to take a preventative approach to managing absence, for example, by providing support for childcare. So, in fact, this approach also cuts down on absence levels. Well, these are the basic findings of my research, and now I'd like to give you some